So there is another Beatport #1 track that we have to talk about. It's called Dark Clouds, released on Drumcode by Teenage Mutants, Peter Pan and Herhorst. And while we can't really rebuild this epic vocal, there is this one distinguished 303 sound that I want to show you today how it's done. So this is what we're talking about today, the Acid Steps in Dark Clouds by Teenage Mutants, Peter Pan and Herhorst on Drumcode. Yeah, one of the biggest tracks of the year so far, peak time techno #1 for a lot of weeks right now. I have lost track kind of. So also before we start the video, my window is open because it's 30 degrees outside, so it's a bit of a different lighting and you will hear some noise from outside, but this is kind of necessary today for me to survive the recording of the video. So, what we want to have a look at, of course, is the 303. I did it with SERUM, and I'm going to show you how I did it and how all the effects come together to make it sound like this. The pattern is actually pretty simple. But first of all, let's just briefly talk about what we have. Here is a little beat. It's a kick of the Peak Time Volume 2 sample pack, which is available in our shop. The link is up here. And just some EQing, some drum bass to make it a little harder, right? And goes to show you how those samples can be used in a variety of ways to sound unique. We have a little bit of a bass line right here. And just a hi-hat closed, playing this kind of 16th note rhythm with an emphasis on the offbeat, and this is all that we need as a foundation for this track. So of course in the original there's also some more atmosphere and of course the vocal, right? And I couldn't rebuild the vocal, but yeah, we're gonna focus on the 303 now, and if we have a listen to it in solo, it does sound like this. And if you look at the patch in SERUM, you can see that it's actually quite a simple patch, right? It looks like quite a simple patch. One oscillator, and there's not much happening, right? No warping, no unison, no filter, okay, no noise, no sub, no LFOs attached, only a little bit of envelope. Yeah, so what is this sound? Why does it sound like it does? Maybe we start in the oscillator section. So first of all, I went -1 with this sound. So when you use it, you're more likely to have lower notes because they are playing this very, very low octave in the track. If we go to 0 and have the G1 here, we get this classical acid sound. But we want this kind of too low, kind of distorted from the get-go acid sound here. This is too low, obviously. There's no real structure to the sound anymore. But like this, it works just fine, right? So we have this envelope 2 here. So first of all, the amp envelope maybe. Sustain is like at -16 dB, so it's a little bit less sustain. So we have a decay time of almost 400 milliseconds, so the sound doesn't feel too strong, but has more of like a plucky element to it, right? There's also just a little bit of release, and we're gonna work with the pluck of the sound even more in the sound design. But first of all, this is the shape that we wanted for the amplitude. And now envelope 2, here we have it on the wavetable position. So this acid wavetable is a super interesting one. Let's bypass this for a moment, the wavetable position. And I'm going to show you what it sounds like if I move it around. So it's essentially kind of recreating the harmonics of an acid sound. It almost feels like a sync, right? If you would put a little bit of sync here. It's obviously not the same if you look at it visually, but there's still like some kind of attitude to it that is similar. But yeah, like this you can kind of rebuild the opening of the filter. So if I move the wavetable up like this and back down, this is like the filter opening on a real 303. And so this is what we do with the envelope too. We just open the wavetable position up to maximum, which is here, which is like the most open point of the filter, and then we go back. So we don't open it all the way, but almost. And yeah, that's just there to give this 303 feeling. So we have this 303 texture macro down here, and if I lower it, I'm essentially moving the intensity of the modulation around. So you can see here in the matrix, where are we? Envelope 2 modulates a wavetable position and is aux sourced by macro 3, which means that this essentially, the amount of the modulation is controlled by this macro, which I call 303 texture. Just to make sure that you guys understand, you can change the color of the sound. So next up, you might be asking yourself where all the sound design is coming from, or if this is just what we have to do to make a sound like this. Well, there is a lot of effects and they actually do a lot. So we want to disable all of them and have a listen. So now it's much quieter and you can hear that there's still like kind of the same character, but there's a lot that has to be done. And we can go through it step by step actually. Let's start with the hyperdimension, only using the dimension here, not too much, 20% with a low size, which basically creates something like a Haas effect. You can see here on the screen it says adds extra layer of phase delay. So basically we have like the sound delayed left and right in different delay times, and therefore we create like a wide stereo image, but I only mix this in. If we do it like this, you can hear it goes completely, there was a big car, it goes completely off to the side. So next up we have the EQ, and I'm just cutting like below the 80 Hertz here and boosting like kind of essentially everything above like the low mids. So like 1000 Hertz and everything above gets boosted because I wanted just a little more presence for the sound. Next up we have the filter, and this filter is kind of here to recreate this pluckiness of a real 303 even a bit more, because we have this, but even in the lowest like wavetable position here, there's still some higher frequencies, and I didn't want this all the time, so I added this filter, and it's a 6 dB per octave filter, and you can see here now envelope 2 is also on this one, and this is controlled by this knob. So you have essentially two options with this one and this one to kind of change the color of the sound, which will be very interesting if you use it for your own productions, to automate it and to have different sections of your track with different settings. Of course, we need distortion on a sound like this. Here we have a pre-distortion filter. So first, before anything happens, we have a filter set at like 12,000, so taking away just the highest little bit of frequencies. Doesn't make too much of a difference, I think, here also with the filter, but it's still, like most of the times, a good workflow in a distortion to take a little bit the harshness out of the sound. And we are going for the hard clip mode here because we want a very strong sound with a lot of drive, fully mixed in. Gives us just a little more like power and squishes the sound together, right? Next up, kind of doing the opposite a little bit, or like, you know, we do a little bit too much here, then we take a little bit away here. This is a technique that I always use whenever I do sound design or mixing, and I can really suggest it. There's a lot of videos here on the channel where I explain it a bit deeper. So we added a lot of, like, we took away a lot of dynamics and added a lot of power with the distortion. Now we want a bit of the dynamics back and a bit of transient back. So we have this compressor with like a medium attack, like 70 milliseconds, so it will leave through a little bit of transient, and also medium release, so it doesn't come right up, but can focus a bit more on the transient, right? So it's not easy to hear compression. Maybe get this sound for yourself. You can also, that is always very helpful, take a smexoscope and have a look. Here mainly we get louder, so we would have to also go down with the gain a little bit, but this is always a good trick using the smexoscope, essentially to see that we have some transients here, and even though it's quieter now, there's not as much transient here. But always make sure to gain stage that so you can see it easier on the smexoscope and your ear also doesn't get all that tricked. So next up we have a reverb, and this is only like 50% mixed in here of kind of a not too small room. This is what it sounds like, but we only want just a little bit of it to give it a little more stereo information and just a little bit of breathing room to make the sound feel more natural. And there we are. So this is how those heavy distorted 303 steps work in dark clouds. I hope this was helpful for you. Get the preset by following the link in the description, and if you like that, stick around on the channel. We have a lot of videos about music production, techno, hard techno, melodic techno, everything on here. And I can only say, have a good time, keep making music, and see you very soon.